Greetings, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. You know, I am so blessed to get to do so many different kinds of videos on this channel. Videos that I never in a million years would have even thought about had it not been for submissions from my subscribers, my viewers, my haters. All of the above, you know? It's just appreciated. And today we have a deep dive from a guy who calls himself, ironically, just another guy. And he said, this is of course only a draft. The biggest benefit of this champion, Radioactive Man, is to be a strong debuff defender similar to Void. Either in addition to or instead of this kit, he could also be made to be similar to Red Magneto to Metal Champions, but for champions the result of radiation exposure. And his screen name technically is Vaterzite, Vaterzeit, Vaterzite. So I know he's been waiting patiently, as many of you are, for me to get to your submissions. And if you're watching this, my friend, that means I made it onto YouTube. So, immunities. Radioactive Man is immune to acid burn, bleed, cold snap, degeneration, poison, radiation sickness, and rupture. In addition, Radioactive Man has critical resistance from non-skill champions. Already an interesting start. Radioactive. Being near Radioactive Man, striking him or him striking others is dangerous to their health. Every 2 seconds, he inflicts fatigue and exhaustion debuffs for 6 seconds. Fatigue debuffs reduce critical hit chance by a percentage, and exhaustion reduce critical damage by a percentage. After achieving 3 or more of both debuffs, those debuffs are converted into one radiation sickness debuff, reducing ability accuracy by a certain percent for 15 seconds. Champions inflicted with bleed or poison debuffs have their potency increased by a percentage while under the effect of radiation sickness, which is quite a fascinating concept, I think. Atomic form. Radioactive Man's body is made entirely of radiological materials and therefore must maintain a balance or risk of meltdown. Critical hits against Radioactive Man increase his meltdown charges by up to 5% depending on the amount of damage dealt. So, this is another example where critical hits might come back to haunt you, which is why champs like Crossbones or Guillotine 2099 are so valuable. Skill champions ignore this cap, while Mystic champions are capped to 2.5% of the damage dealt. Upon reaching 600 charges, Radioactive Man overloads. This causes the time of the debuffs inflicted by Radioactive to be reduced by 1 second, and the amount reduced by 1 for both debuffs to inflict radiation sickness. While under the effect of Incinerate debuffs, double the charges gained from damage dealt to Radioactive Man, and while under the effect of Frostbite debuffs, half the charges gained from damage dealt to Radioactive Man. And in radiation manipulation, Radioactive Man is able to manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum, which causes champions to not benefit from phasing due to Radioactive Man interfering with the density of the air around them. Well, we can guess who the phasing is going to be targeted at, aka Ghost and Kitty Pryde. Robot champions have a percent ability accuracy reduction from interfering with the processing signals for their functions. Critical hits by Radioactive Man refresh any debuff inflicted by Radioactive. Energy attacks, SIG ability, atomic weapon. Radioactive Man's debuff potency and duration is increased by a certain percentage. Attacks for his heavy attack harden the radiation of his arm and refresh fatigue and exhaustion debuffs on the opponent. Radioactive Man fires 3 bursts of energy. Each hit has a chance to inflict a degeneration debuff, dealing a percentage amount of damage over time. Special 2, Radiation Breath. Radioactive Man charges up a massive expulsion of radiation and releases it from his mouth. Each critical hit inflicts radiation sickness for a percent of time. And Special 3, Nuclear Release. A Radioactive Man builds up a massive amount of nuclear energy and directs it as a controlled explosion, dealing X energy damage. All radiation sickness debuffs become passive debuffs that do not expire. Synergies. He's only got 1 listed. Baron Zemo for Thunderbolts can now cleanse passive debuffs. That's cool. And then for enemies, War Machine, Iron Patriot, Scientific Curiosity, Spider-Man, Anti-Venom, She-Hulk. Poison immune champions have increased potency of radiation sickness debuffs. And then synergy champions, critical hits on special attacks inflict a degeneration debuff, dealing X damage over X time. And then civil collaborators, Reed Richards, potency of debuffs increased by a percentage. Radioactive Man has special attacks passively unblockable while opponents are inflicted with radiation sickness. Now, maybe you got all of that, maybe you didn't. Maybe like me, you got a little some of it and some of it didn't. Either way, I mean, this is really amazing hard work that is put into these buff concepts with champions that I sometimes know a lot about and sometimes know nothing about. But that's what makes having a YouTube channel where people hit you up and submit ideas so special. And that's why I still do this. Number one, it's just to have fun, doing something different, and being more creative in a way that, when you teach, you kind of have to vicariously live through your students. So when you have a YouTube channel, you get to vicariously live through yourself, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but also is what I just said. So have a great rest of your day, YouTube, and thank you again to Just Another Guy, or Vaterzeit, Vaterzeit in game, for the buff concept submission.